Hello everyone and welcome to Perspective. This is a public affairs presentation of Florida Gateway College. My name is Mike McKee and I have a special guest on the program today. He is Mike LESTOCK. He is an author, a first-time author of a textbook in French, teaching French speakers how to speak English. Mike is originally from Lake City. We'll talk to him when we come back. Don't go away.
Body language can tell you all sorts of things. Like someone is having a stroke. Know the sudden signs. Learn fast. Face drooping, arm weakness, speech difficulty. Time to call 911 and get them to a hospital immediately. Learn the body language and spot a stroke fast.
Welcome back to Perspective here on Florida Gateway College Television. I'm Mike McKee and my guest is Mike LESTOCK, who is an author of a book in French that teaches French speakers how to speak English. First of all, Mike, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Mike. I am so happy to be here today.
Well, and we've known each other for a long time.
Since Boys Club Basketball.
Boys Club Basketball, way back in the day. Mike has been in Lake City most of his life. His mom and dad still live here. And you've been on a journey, so to speak. Tell us first about you moved to France right after college. Talk about going to France and how that all came about.
Well, you know, when I went to my first college, I went to the University of Tampa in South Florida, and I was a sports management major, and I also decided to do a second major in French and international business. And I realized that it was impossible to really learn a language and to apply everything from my classes living in America. So I decided to go abroad. For the first time I went to Quebec and then to the south of France. I came back, I went to France again. Then finally I wound up working there, and now I've been living there for about 11 years.
About 11 years. Well, let's back up a little bit. You went to Columbia High School. You were influenced by Carol Wise, who was your French teacher. Talk about her influence in your life, because it was an early on influence. Because
indeed,
you don't delve into French. It's one of the hardest languages.
Yeah, you know, each language has its difficulties. French certainly has many of them. When I was in high school, I was in 10th grade, I think. I had the option to take 2 years of a foreign language. A lot of my friends said, "You need to go into Mrs. Wise class. She's an excellent teacher." And she was really she was my first influence as far as French language studies. So yeah, she's an excellent teacher, and we still keep in touch today.
Now, so that got you interested in French, but you were on the soccer team. You played sports at Columbia High School.
Absolutely.
You're always a Tiger, right? Always.
Absolutely.
So talk about your journey. You went to the University of Tampa. You went to Auburn. Yeah. And you said, at what point said, you know what? I want to teach people how to speak French. Well, I want to teach people how to speak English, speaking French.
Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think you're kind of born a teacher, so it's kind of like this itch that you have, and I wanted to learn French and English a lot better. And there's no better way than to be in front of students and professionals on a daily basis, teaching them this. And I had the option to teach French in America, and I did that for 2 years. It was an excellent experience, but it wasn't exactly what I wanted, so I decided to go abroad and teach English.
Well, you and I talked when we were preparing for the program. You have to know French inside and out to teach. Yeah. You have to know English inside because you teach grammatic language. Talk about it. You said it's very difficult. I can't even imagine what's all going through your head when you're trying to speak and make points in certain languages and the nuances in either language.
Well, that was one of the things, the things you're talking about there are some of the principal reasons why I wrote this book. What is very, very difficult, for example, for French speakers learning English is, okay, how do I conjugate the English verb? And then how do I use it? And once I understand that information more or less, how do I construct the sentence around the verb with a good understanding of basic French and English grammar? And there was no other book that had really talked about that. So as a teacher, I try to cover those things in all of my lessons.
And so you wrote the book. You just at what point? Here's the book. I can't speak French, but can you tell me what that is, how that is
The rough
pronounced?
translation of that?
Yeah.
Okay, the English verb, how to construct its sentences.
The English verb. Mm-hmm. So you wrote a book about teaching properly.
Yeah.
Now you use this. You teach at several universities
Yeah, I teach
in
with
French
4
or France.
Universities, actually, currently, yes.
And you said you wanted to make it easier for your students to learn English. Why would a student in France want to learn English?
Well, you know, to travel abroad, and more, of course, France is in the center of Europe. So you have many people who come to France who don't speak French as their first language, or maybe not at all. So, of course, to communicate with them, English is one of the principal international languages. So they want to learn English, first of all, just to speak with non-French speaking people in France. And then a lot of them are in business situations. They're business students, or a lot of my students are in the nursing and medical professions. So they need these skills to work with patients who are not native French speakers.
Well, and in Europe, it's not like going from state to state. It's like open everywhere. You can travel through the borders. Like if you wanted to get a job in England as a nurse, you would definitely have to learn how to speak English.
Absolutely.
Same thing with other English-speaking countries. If you wanted to come to America, and you could do that. I want to talk about you living in France. That's quite the plunge to leave America and go live in France. What possessed you to say, I'm going to take the plunge and move over there?
Yeah, you know, I could talk about that for hours, but I remember what started this off. I was about 5 or 6 years old. I was a student at Epiphany Day School, and one day we were waiting outside of the classroom, you know, to go in after recreation or whatever, and there were 2 Spanish-speaking students next to me. They spoke English very well into Spanish, and they were speaking to each other in Spanish. And I was very young at that time, and I said, wow, that is one of the coolest things in the world, to speak 2 languages. I don't know why exactly. And from that point on, there was like this seed planted in me, and I said, I have to learn a foreign language one day. And you can learn a lot living in your home country, but the only way to really master reading, writing, speaking, understanding, etc., a foreign language, you have to go and live abroad and experience it every day.
Well, I think we've got some photographs from there is a Chamber of Commerce. And what town do you live in?
I live it's a small town in the south, Lake City, about 40,000 people. It is called Roanne, R-O-A-N-N-E.
Roanne. Okay, Kerry, there's a church. You know, you have to love the architecture of French. This is obviously an old church in your town.
Yeah, I believe that parts of that date from the 12th century, I believe.
12th century. You know, and even if you're a history buff, moving to, you know, we only have 200 or so years of history here in America.
Exactly.
There is history, and you said this is a town hall?
Yeah, that's the town hall. Exactly. Yeah, we have a very nice town hall, and an older building on which they've constantly built and renovated. So it's a very beautiful structure.
And there's the river. What river?
It's called La Loire, L-O-I-R-E.
You know, Mike, even the bridges are old.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at that. That's really, really nice architecture.
It is. I've crossed that bridge many times.
Yeah.
On foot.
I believe this is the same church we saw. But it must be nice to wake up and see old architecture and feel the history of the town. I mean, you and I talked preparing for this. Your town was occupied by the Germans during World War II.
Absolutely.
And the French resistance was big in your area.
Yeah, in the region of Rouen, yes.
So there's a lot of history, especially with Normandy and the D-Day anniversary. And of course, this is. Tell the folks about this.
Okay, in the world, there are about 100 3-star restaurants. That's the highest ranking for restaurants. And I work with the employees of this restaurant. It's called Trois Gros. And the rough translation is the 3 fat men. That's the rough translation. And this is a very famous restaurant in France. And there you see the inside. There's the head chef, Michel Trois Gros, who is the current owner. He is the 3rd generation owner of this restaurant.
So people from all over Europe probably come to this restaurant.
Yeah, and that's why I've been working with them. The waiters, They quite often have customers from China, Japan, Russia, etc., who don't speak French, and of course they're going to serve and speak with these customers in English.
The universal language at this point is
absolutely
is English. This we were talking earlier. You teach at a university that teaches nursing students.
Yeah, I work in a nursing school, so it's medical English lessons, and yeah, this is from the website of the nursing school of Juan, where I've been working for about 4 years now.
And there's the hospital.
That's our newly renovated hospital, beautiful, incredible structure.
You know, it's kind of cool to see the old structures, but you also have modern structures as well where you live. Let's get back to the book. A textbook. We all know how boring a textbook can be when you're in school. You're looking at how it was written. It's written to teach, basically, and that's you go into this. You want to do a textbook. At what point did you say, all right, I'm going to do it?
You know, I could talk about that for hours, but basically, you know, it's a dream that I've had for years. When I started studying at the University of Tampa with an excellent teacher, the best teacher I've ever had, Dr. Leith, late Dr. Leith, unfortunately. He left us in about 2006. He really was a tremendous influence. And I started to read grammar books from the first to the last page, tens of them, to learn the French and English language. And I said, I could write a grammar book one day, you know? I could do this one day because Dr. Leith and Mrs. Wise and other teachers had taught me the basics of grammar so well. I said that I could do this. And then another thing, in France, it's a very common perception that I have so many people have told me, Mike, French people are not good at learning English. The education system is not doing its job as far as the English classes go. And what they tell me the most often is, Mike, I don't understand the verb conjugation. And even when I understand how to construct it, or how to conjugate the verbs, I don't understand how to construct the sentences.
So do they give up? Do they say, I'm just not going to learn it? And it kind of is an obstacle to them learning English.
Let me tell you, it is extremely frustrating for a lot of French people. My students say quite often, you know, Mr. LESTOCK, that's all good that we want to do this lesson today. 5 and 10 years ago, when I started my first classes, they start in general in France when they're about 10 years old. You know, English classes a few hours a week, much younger than we do. And they say, you know, it's all good, Mr. LESTOCK, but I'm so frustrated, you know, or I had a bad teacher, I had a bad experience. I just have never assimilated English grammar.
How long did it take you to write this? This is, and it's very well, you know, there's some places in here, there are tables in here about verbs and conjugating it, and that, I mean, you could use this as a translation book as well.
You know, one of the things that I covered, maybe about a fifth of the book was, okay, I have my sentence in English or my sentence in French. How can I translate that back into the other language by analyzing, first of all, the verb conjugations, and then going back to the other parts of the sentence, the subject, the complements, etc.
Does French and Spanish and other German, do those languages make more sense than English?
Absolutely. I don't know much about German, but I do know the conjugation systems of, for example, Italian, Spanish, and French are very similar. Whereas
they all make sense because
more or less, they're logical.
Yeah, and in English it just doesn't. There are no steadfast rules.
No.
Was that another challenge for you when you're writing this book, that, you know, throw out everything you know about French?
Exactly.
Because that's not the way it is in English.
Exactly. That is what I tell my students all of the time. First of all, to begin to learn English, you have to relearn, you have to unlearn a lot of things, and then relearn, first of all, basic French grammar. Then you must learn basic English grammar, and then, of course, you start by learning how to conjugate the verbs.
Okay, so if you don't have a good basic grammar handle in French, it's going to be more difficult for you to learn English.
Absolutely.
So what you do is you teach grammar first, right?
That was one of the first parts of my book. I even said this. I explained that to them. Hey, if you really want to learn English and finally start to advance and progress in English, we're going to go through a little review of French and English grammar together. And then I covered, I did a review of French and how the French conjugation system compares to the English system. And a lot of that was obvious for them, of course. But I wanted to re-explain it and compare it with English grammar before I really went into the English verb.
Your students make great progress, don't they?
I sure hope so. Yeah, I've
seen
a lot of progress.
You know, you'd love to be able to measure how your students do against other students that don't use their book. talk about how hard this was.
You mean to write the book?
Yeah. Or was it once you got started, you said, well, this is going pretty quick?
I'll tell you what, that's a great question. Once again, to learn how to write this book, it was 20 years of learning and efforts. After that, I had the publishing contract with a very big company in France, one of the biggest for this type of books, called Studyrama. Once I had that, I had about 6 or 7 months to write the book according to the dates of the contract. And I said, Mike, you're going to wake up every morning at 5. You're going to work on your book for at least 2 hours a day, 14 hours per week. And I timed myself every day. And that's what I did for about 7 or 8 months. And I've kept pretty much the same schedule since then. And really the most difficult part wasn't writing the book. A lot of that was almost from memory and other experiences with French grammar and English grammar. The most difficult part was at the end, when you have to go through and edit and correct and format with the publishing company.
Well, so you had an editor that would go in there and say, you know what, we need to do this, we need to do that. Because it's your baby, right? And you don't want anybody messing with your baby because you wrote it the way that you wanted to write it.
Yeah, you base it on your teaching style and your experiences, of course. But at the same time, you're very happy to have some advice from people who have published literally thousands. This is a very big company, thousands of books. I was very happy to have their advice.
Tell the folks the story about how. All right, so you decided to write the book.
Yeah.
Now where do you go? You said you wrote some letters. Talk about how you got the publisher.
Yeah. Well, here's the typical process. You write maybe the whole book or a few chapters. And then you hope and pray, you send it everywhere and hope that one editor says, hey, here's a contract, finish this book and let's publish it. I did not want to do like all the other people. So what I did, quite simply, I had worked with some grammar books in France in our local library with my students. And I did some research on 5 different authors. And I found their email addresses on Facebook or something like that. And I wrote this long email to each of these persons, and I said, basically, this is what I want to do with this grammar book. I've started, and it's going along, but not very quickly. And I didn't want to ask for free help, because I said they have tens of mails every week about free help. I explained very clearly. To make a long story short, I will pay you a consultation fee. Can I come up to Paris to see you and get some information out of you? And about 48 hours later, the woman who became my editor, who works with Studyrama, her name is Annie Reitman, she sent me an email and said, come up to Paris and show me your information. Of course I won't ask you for money. About 3 months later, I had a publishing contract.
So that doesn't happen all the time, but there must have been a great interest in doing a book that she must have seen something in your email and the first chapter that you presented to her that she said, you know what, we need to do this.
Exactly. I think our publishing company needed this type of grammar book. They already had a lot of others about English grammar, not exactly what I wanted to do. So it was like to fill in a little niche that they felt was empty. And I really think that my approach was so different from what she had consistently seen in her career. She said, I at least need to meet this crazy American writing me this crazy email. I really think that was it.
So would you call this the LESTOCK method? I mean,
yeah.
I mean, when you think about it, this is yours. You developed this over the 20 years, so it is your method. Mm-hmm. So it could be considered the LESTOCK method.
That's a great question. One of my principal goals for non-French speakers learning French, there is this famous verb book. It's like the granddaddy of all the verb books. It's called Le Becherel. And I'm sure that Mrs. Wise, she introduced me to this book at CHS, in fact. And I want my book to become Le Becherel for French speakers learning English. That's my overall goal. So yeah, I sure hope that someday they'll say La méthode LESTOCK. Absolutely.
And you wrote this last year. This book was published in would you say March?
March of 2013.
And you've already had a second edition.
Yeah, the publishing company, they called me. I explained to them, I said, listen, I am not like other authors. I'm not going to write a book, have it come out, and hope and pray that it sells. I'm going to do everything I can for you and for me that this book makes us famous, because I want to help as many French speakers as possible to advance in English. And so they understood that, and they really wanted to help me. We've had an incredible relationship. I've been very happy with Studyrama. And they called me up and said, Mike, you are not yet Stephen King, huh?
Yeah.
But your first 6 months of sales have been really good for a first-year book. If you want to, let's do a second edition. And that's how that came about.
but it's a table that shows the English verb, and then the grammar way to conjugate it, and then in French it does the same thing. And they're throughout this book.
Yeah.
Talk about how you developed that.
Okay, well, in English and French, we have about 20 verb tenses. So what I did was chapter by chapter, kind of in the middle of the book, I covered each verb tense. You know, you start by the present, you finish by the subjunctive. And I covered each verb tense, and I said, these are the principal reasons why it's used, and here are the differences and the similarities with the present in French. And then something that was missing from all the other grammar books that I've analyzed was a complete verb conjugation table, which covers not only the affirmative sentences, that's where most grammar books that I've seen stop, but it also covers the other 3 types of sentences. You have affirmative, then you have negative, interrogative sentences, and then you have sentences that are negative in interrogative, like Mike works in Lake City. Does Mike work in Lake City? Mike does not work in Lake City. Doesn't Mike work in Lake City? Most grammar books only cover the first type of sentence. And I've noticed that for so many of my students and professional customers, they do not know how to conjugate the other types of sentences. No one has ever shown this to them. So I wanted to really do a complete, simple, but very complete and detailed book, especially about the English verb conjugation.
It's almost like you've unlocked something in doing this this way. That like, I've never heard it described like that until just now, and you've got to think if the other grammar books leave that out, then you're missing something in learning a language.
Yeah, and you know, the concept of this book is not genius. I mean, it's something that even a lot of my colleagues in teaching have told me is missing from grammar books, and a lot of my students as well. So, you know, I don't understand, I'm perplexed why I don't see these verb conjugation tables in as much detail in a lot of other books, but sure. Yeah, it's like you're opening up a new box of information.
Now, I don't remember if you told me this. Do you want to do a book in French from English to French?
Yeah, one of the future ideas, and my mom and dad always talk to me about this. They say, son, that's great, but we can't read in French. So could you do this book for English speakers learning the French verb and French sentence construction? So one of my future goals, I hope to start this in about a year or two, is to write, this same book more or less, but for English speakers who are learning French. Absolutely.
Where can they get this book? I know that you know, I guess you sell it on Amazon.
Yeah, my publishing company took care of that.
There's what the book looks like, and it's available at Amazon.com. And I think we may have your address as well if somebody wants to. If a classmate of yours from Columbia High School, class of
92, baby.
92.
Come on, we were the best ever.
Yeah,
Mike.
and if some of the guys that played soccer with you back in the day want to get in touch with you, you're on Facebook.
Absolutely.
And your email can be seen on your website. But also, I figured a lot of our audience don't use computers. If they wanted to write you a letter, I remember you. I taught you English, or I taught you math, or I taught. I guess, do we have that slide? There we go. Can you put a regular postage stamp on it to send it to France? Or is there special postage?
No, it's special postage. It will probably take 2 or 3 stamps, but yeah, a normal letter will get there in about a week.
Anyway, there's your website.
Yeah.
If you would like to reach him, you can go on his website. I got one more question here.
Absolutely.
You went to France. You learned some things that you didn't know about traveling abroad. If you could tell people that maybe wanted to go to France for a couple weeks vacation, or if they want to, you know, do the thing where they walk across Europe, what are some things that you would recommend they do?
Oh, wow. You know, if you decide to come to France or Spain or Russia or China, whatever country, the time you spend abroad, 3 months, 6 months, a couple years, whatever, will be among, and I've talked to many people about this, will be among the best, most incredibly enthralling experiences of your life. And now, more than ever, through, of course, the armed forces, there's the au pair program, there are many study programs and work abroad, job internship programs. There are way more opportunities than ever to go and work and live and study abroad. So it will be the best experience of of your life. And I would even go further to say it is almost absolutely necessary now that everyone tries to spend, especially I'm talking to the current high school and university students, that you spend a little bit of time abroad. It is such an incredibly eye-opening experience. And you will learn so many things that you could never learn living in the same country all of your life.
Yeah, broaden your horizon.
Absolutely.
I've never been to Europe, but that's one thing I would love to do. Mike, thanks for being on the program. It's been great. Again, you can buy his book at Amazon.com, and you're in town for a couple weeks during the summertime.
Yeah, I'm here visiting my parents.
And then you're going to be back in France, and
back working in France.
so we wish you the best of luck.
Okay, and Mike, I had a little surprise for you. Do we have a few
you
minutes?
told me. Yeah, we got.
Yeah, I have two things. You guys saw a little while ago the restaurant Trois Gros. Well, I figure that Mike and his colleagues, that they might need a little break every now and then. So for the next time that you guys have something to celebrate, I brought you one bottle of their white wine.
Oh, wow. This is great.
And a bottle of their red wine. So now you have a complete meal.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah.
Terrific.
It's a very famous wine in France that the Trois Gros restaurant sells.
And the best wine in the world is in France.
That's the rumor.
Well, thanks for being on the program.
Oh, and there's also another thing,
we got
Mike.
some more.
Yeah.
All right.
Oh, come on. I have to thank you. To make sure I really thank you. I work at a chocolate making. I work with a chocolate making company to teach them English, and they're very popular in the south of France. And here are some chocolates from the company.
Awesome. Well, thank you.
Oh, Mike, thank you.
Thanks for being on the program, and thank you for watching Perspective with a special guest, Mike LESTOCK. Until next time, I'm Mike McKee. So long, everyone.
Au revoir.
Thank you so much. This is nice.